Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it has all been building to this. After 5 volumes, hundreds of years worth of history, and more heartbreak than one could imagine, yet somehow triumph through all of it, we have gotten to this place. Hadrian Marlowe is a boy no longer. No, he is a man, a myth, and becoming a Sun-Eater. It has all brought us to this one place, the beginning of the end. Welcome to Samwise, and this is Disquiet Gods. Thank you all for tuning into my review of Disquiet Gods, Book 6 of the Sun-Eater. I'm going to do my best to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible, just in case anybody's watching this who is not yet current on the series. I will get this out of the way at the beginning. This is the best book in the Sun-Eater series so far, and we're going to go into why. This might not be my personal favorite, although I think it probably is. That aside, though, I think on a technical level, this is Ruocchio at his best, firing on all cylinders, making the most profound, the most moving, and the most epic of the Sun-Eater books so far. In Book 6 of the Sun-Eater, Disquiet Gods, our hero, Hadrian Marlowe, is called out of exile by the Emperor because an eldritch god has been discovered, and he's been assigned the task to try to kill it somehow. With the treacherous Lothrians now having made a pact with the cruel and heartless Cielcen alien army, the Empire is on its last leg. They're getting desperate and are looking to forge new alliances with the bizarre extrasolarian hordes. The beginning of the end is upon us, and we begin to see how the pieces are being set up for the ending of this bombastic series. Disquiet Gods, being the 6th book in the Sun-Eater series, really takes strong amounts from the previous 5 books going before it. The 5 books before this really all do have their distinct flavors and tones, and things that they emphasize as far as the ideas that Christopher Ruocchio has been playing with in this series, and I think Disquiet Gods in many ways is the best of all of those parts. It condenses all of the best elements from each of the previous volumes and gives us a healthy dose of that as we come up to the end of this series. We go back to the Indiana Jones feeling archaeology uncovering mysteries of Empire of Silence. We see a lot of the bizarre, weird mysteries of Howling Dark and seeing beyond the curtain of space and time in this book. Many of the political maneuverings of Demon and White and intercourt politics are emphasized in this book. The cruelty of the Cielcen and the weird spiritual connections that they have to the eldritch beings that are also beyond space and time are explored in greater depth here. And also many of the deep personal connections that we see in Ashes of Man have their payoff in Disquiet Gods, as Hadrian, a very broken and now an old man, seeks to find some meaning in his life after he's done all of these things for the Emperor, and sees that the galaxy that he's fighting for now is not a galaxy that he knows, or the one that he started fighting for all those hundreds of years ago. This bringing together all of these parts from the previous books really makes Disquiet Gods feel like a culmination, makes it feel like the beginning of the end, like all of the pieces are starting to fall into place, and that the Sun-Eater journey really is starting to wind down. Or maybe it would be better to say that all of these pieces are really ratcheting it up to the explosive conclusion that we're supposed to get in late 2025. One of my favorite aspects of this book specifically is that in a lot of fantasy and science fiction book series, when you get into the later parts of the series or after the author has written enough books, they start to feel a little watered down. They can feel more like a product, more like this is what's expected of me, this is what the audience is looking for, so we'll just give them more of that. Ruocchio absolutely does not do that here. Though he pulls a lot from all of the other books in the series, he is pushing forward and breaking new ground in ways that will surprise even the most perceptive reader of this series. He doubles down on his most bizarre tendencies and the most weird ideas that he's been exploring in this series, and goes to places that will really rattle some cages. Some people will love it, other people it might not work for them. In a word, this penultimate book of the Sun-Eater saga is absolutely fearless. Ruocchio is fearless in the places that he's willing to go in this book. Whereas in previous books, people have compared the series a lot to Dune and Star Wars, and we've talked about that already in this on this channel before. In Disquiet Gods, instead of it being heavily influenced by those things, Ruocchio really pulls to the forefront his influences from things like Lovecraft and Berserk. He emphasizes those way more than maybe the traditional fantasy and science fiction things that people would be expecting at this point in the series. Also, Ruocchio is known throughout the series for playing with a lot of tropes. The Chosen One, the Evil Empire, all of these different things, and really putting his own spin on it, saying tropes that people always claim to hate, maybe they don't hate, maybe they just haven't been done right, or they haven't been done correctly, and maybe he can change some readers' minds on that. Or tropes where people say, oh, I know where this is going. Well, you might not. Maybe he can surprise you. Ruocchio loves doing that throughout the series, and there's a lot more of that in Disquiet Gods as well. First of all, in this book, there's the old adventurer coming back, for one last job. That's obviously a common trope in this genre, and Ruocchio institutes that in Disquiet Gods. You also have the trope of the space princess, Ruocchio plays with all of these things in some really unexpected ways, but also in very satisfying ways as well. And the constant narration from our main character, Hadrian Marlowe, really lends a gravitas to these tropes and helps us anticipate where the series might go. We might have some predictions of our own, but Hadrian leaves everything just vague enough that it always keeps us guessing. That is one of the best elements of this book specifically, is that we are now 6 books into this series. And so because of that, we've been hearing Hadrian talk about, and the next time I would see this person, it would be, moments before the most horrible thing in my life, or all of these melodramatic forewarnings that we're used to him giving. We're getting to see many of those pay off in this book. We're getting to see how these pieces are starting to fit together. It's like finishing a puzzle where you start going, ooh, 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 and getting to fill in those final gaps in what Hadrian's journey will ultimately become in the last volume. Many people have wondered, how can he tie everything together? The first 5 books, it seems like we're all over the place. We're in one corridor of the galaxy, and then we're with these people, and we're going over here. Are these just going to be a lot of scattered adventures that don't all come together at the very end? And Disquiet Gods shows us that we still have a remaining book left, and in this book itself, Christopher Ruocchio is able to tie together so many elements from the previous books in the series that I have absolutely no doubt in his ability to give a fully satisfying conclusion that also ties over all of the significant or important arcs from earlier on. This has been noted before, but oddly enough, this is the most Hadrian-centric book in all of the Sun Eater series. It's very common in science fiction and fantasy as the series goes on for more characters to be introduced and more points of view and for the stories to expand, and I've never seen it happen quite like this before, where in the penultimate book of the series, instead, all of these distractions, all of these other plot threads, all of the things that you would expect in this type of book get really brushed to the sidelines, and we really do focus in on Hadrian and where he is in this moment and how he's dealing with all of the trauma from his past adventures, his PTSD, how he's dealing from the heartbreak and the tragedies that he's experienced over his hundreds of years of life, and really where he's at and how he's able to get to this final place where he can become the hero that he's been set up to be in this series. We get to know him as an older and really a very broken man by this book. We get to see him process a lot of that pain and grief. And some people might consider this to be a minor spoiler, so I'll go ahead and say that, spoiler warning if you're really sensitive to this type of thing. But the main character on the front of this book is Cassandra, which is Hadrian's daughter. And the relationship between Cassandra and Hadrian throughout this book really is the heart of this story. It's the driving force. We get to see a side of Hadrian that we've never seen before. We've gotten to see Hadrian as a young man, we've got to see him as a leader, we've got to see him as a lover, as a general, as a captive, but we've never gotten to see Hadrian truly as a father before. And the things that Cassandra brings out of Hadrian and the way that she impacts him and changes his heart and changes who he is and how he processes things, how he assesses threats and risks that he's taking, really changes and matures him as a person as well. It adds some much needed heart to this series as we're getting into the latter stages of it. one of the fascinating things about the Sun Eater books as well, and it is just as true in this penultimate book, is that the Sun Eater books tend to be very dark. The first book, some people could argue that, but certainly the second book on, there's a lot of dark things that happen. To Hadrian, to the people around him, to people that they encounter on their journeys and on their adventures. Some of it can be pretty messed up, pretty dark stuff. The tendency with a lot of these types of series is to have a very nihilistic view of the world. To take a look at suffering and say, look at man's cruelty to man. Look at how evil the universe can be, or how heartless the universe can be. Look at how evil these aliens are. There's no meaning to any of this. We're all just meat puppets. We're all just evolved apes, really, at the end of the day. There's no greater meaning to anything that we do. These feelings that we have for each other, these connections, are really just evolved emotions that we've used over the centuries to keep us alive. None of this really means anything, and as soon as we're dead, well, that's it. The tendency with these types of series is when we're looking at the darkness, and we're looking at it ruthlessly, we're not sugarcoating it, is to come out of it with a very nihilistic perspective. And what's been so interesting about these Sun Eater books is that Ruocchio takes, in many ways, the exact opposite perspective. He has a very hopeful view of the world, a very anti-nihilistic view. It's not naive by any means. Ruocchio absolutely does not pull his punches when it comes to the violence, the brutality, the evil that is in man's heart, the heartlessness that the universe can express. And yet, rather than coming to the conclusion that we are mere specks on a spinning blue globe out in the middle of the universe with nobody watching over us, and so nothing really matters, Ruocchio really seems to come to the conclusion in this series, and especially in this final book, that rather than looking at all of this and saying that nothing matters and nobody matters, rather saying everybody matters. Everything matters. We're created for a purpose. We're created with meaning. There's meaning behind the actions that we take. What we do matters. What I do not only affects my life, but also affects the people around me and the people who are coming after me. And so it behooves me to act with virtue, to act with maturity, and to live in a manner that I can be proud of, in a manner that is honorable, because it's not just about me. It's not just about me living for my own selfish pleasures and whatever makes me happy, but that there's a greater meaning to the things that I do in my life. That seems to be, in a lot of ways, some of the ideas that Ruocchio is at least playing with in this series. Many of the other factions in the Sun Eater series, whether they're aliens, extrasolarians, or the Empire itself, have very differing views of the world. And as Hadrian the character, and in some ways it seems Ruocchio the author is wrestling with these ideas of meaning and who is man and how do we wrestle with our place in the universe, this seems to be the answer, or one of the conclusions that he ultimately comes up with. And to be perfectly honest, not only do I think it's a profound message, I think it's a really important message. And that's why I've said that the Sun Eater books, for as fun as they are, for as much as I enjoy them, for as well written as I think these books are, I think these books also help me become a better person. As I've gone on the journey with Hadrian, as I've gotten to this place, I think I've become a better person as a result of it. If I'm going to be completely transparent at this place in the video, I started reading Empire of Silence late last year, in 2023, so in December, and then finished it up in January. And then every couple months throughout this year, I have been going through this series one book at a time. And this has been a very challenging year in many ways for me. My life is completely unrecognizable from what it was 12 months ago. That has been very difficult, and I am only here being able to be a better person, a significantly better person, significantly more mature than I was a year ago, having grown in so many ways, simply because of grace and because of the loving support of my wife as well, who I could not thank enough. But I have to be completely honest, I don't often say that books change my life, or that books change who I am as a person. I try to reserve hyperbolic statements like that for when they really matter. And I think it really matters here. Going on this journey, seeing how Hadrian, much like Guts from Berserk, has been willing to endure keep pushing forward in the face of such unimaginable suffering, through the face of all the difficulties as in literally heaven and hell have been thrown at him, as he's wrestled with this question of what is my place, what is my duty, how do I deal with the fact that I don't want to keep fighting, I don't want to be in this fight. And speaking as a man who's significantly older than I am, seeing that example that Hadrian has set has been inspiring. I don't believe much in taking fictional characters as literal heroes the way you would with, say, actual people, but Hadrian as an icon, as an idea, as an archetype, as a heroic ideal, has meant a great deal to me this year. Seeing his example of being willing to endure, saying, "This must be," saying, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him," saying, "Pursue hardship," has meant a great deal to me in this year of 2024. And I think a lot of people have felt like this has been a really difficult year. You know, political tensions have never been higher, at least in my lifetime. A lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are trying to figure out what their place is in the universe. This book series, as dumb as it might sound, has helped bring a lot of clarity to that. And that's been incredibly meaningful for me. Disquiet Gods, like I said, has been my favorite of the bunch. I think it's helped provide that solace, that escape from the world, but also reflecting me back to certain truths to remember about the world and about what true virtue is in ways that other books haven't that I've read this year. And so Disquiet Gods being one of the better examples of that in the series, this is definitely one of my favorite books of the year. And you know, I've been up and down on the Sun Eater series. I've loved all of the books, but some of them I've definitely enjoyed more than others. And I'm really, really glad with the trajectory that it's going. I'm really excited to see how this series is going to end. I'm going to be very, very sorry to see it go, but especially with the things that Ruocchio did in this book. Man, I don't know how else to say it other than to say I'm really excited with the path that he's taking. Ruocchio's talked a little bit about Chapter 40 in this book, which deals with some of the more metaphysical elements of the Sun Eater series. Said that it took him, I believe he said, months to write, that he wrote Dregs of Empire in a shorter amount of time than he wrote just this one chapter. And it's a long chapter, to be fair. I think it is one of the best chapters I've ever read in any piece of fiction, ever. I will go back and reread just chapter 40, and really there's a whole sequence from like chapter 37 to 41, but chapter 40 is the heart of it. And I think I'm going to go back and reread that many times, just isolated from the rest of the series, because it's so good. It's so powerful. Certainly the best chapter in this series, if not in my science fiction reading in general. I know that Christopher Ruocchio is somewhat active here on BookTube and connects with a lot of people, so I don't know if he'll see this. I haven't had personally any contact with him other than just commenting in his live streams, but he seems like a really genuine person, a really kind person. So if Christopher happens to see this, I would just like to say, for what it's worth, Mr. Ruocchio, thank you so much for the work that you've done on this series. I've heard you talk a little bit about the behind-the-scenes struggles that you've had in writing this and some of the difficult things that you've had to work through, but it's made me a better person reading these books. It really, really helped me through a difficult year. It'll help me through times to come, as I have most of the series here and definitely plan on rereading it. I don't know, I can feel sometimes when I'm reading fiction like I'm wasting my time. Like, you know, oh, this is just fun. This is just my entertainment. And there's not much of it that I really walk away with a deep sense of personal change. And with this series, I did. I absolutely did. So for what it's worth, thank you so much for these books that you've given us. I eagerly look forward to Shadows Upon Time. And there's actually more than just these books. There's more that I have to thank you about. So maybe one day I'll get the chance to talk to you about some of that. But thank you for the work that you've done. I can't wait to see how this series ends. And best of luck with what comes next. So anyway, guys, I don't know. In some ways, it feels a little bit awkward for me, some of the last few minutes of this video. I was questioning whether I should just scrap the whole video in general, but I did want to talk about this because if for some reason you're watching this and haven't read the series, give it a chance. It's fantastic, and this is the best. It is really great to go into a series knowing that The first book is the only book in the series I gave 4 stars to. Maybe I'd give it 5 upon a reread. But it's not a bad book by any means. It's certainly not a weak book. So it's nice to know that the opening of the series is good. It is that. It is a good book. And then Howling Dark is amazing. And Demon in White is even better. And Kingdoms of Death, before Disquiet Gods, was my favorite of the series. Kingdoms of Death is spectacular. And Ashes of Man is really poignant and thoughtful and heartbreaking. And Disquiet Gods is the king of the hill. It is the best in the series so far. I don't know if Shadows Upon Time can top this for me. Yeah, best in the series, and I hope you guys definitely give this a shot. I can't wait for Shadows Upon Time. Anyway, if anybody's watched this far, let me know. I think I'm going to end it there. So thank you guys for watching this. Maybe overly honest, a slightly emotional review, but this series means a lot to me. I love it very deeply, and can't wait to read to the end of it. So you guys have a good morning, afternoon, or good evening whenever you watch this. So thanks, babe, for watching the baby so I can do this.